and welcome to In Design With, a podcast series by Identity dedicated to architecture, interiors, and design from the Middle East to the world. I'm your host, Anisha Rai, the editor of Identity. Today, we're taking a little break from our podcast studio and are here at Gerbou, a space that lives and breathes Emirati hospitality and a product of a beautiful design collaboration. With us on the show today are Sheikha Lateefa Bint Maktoum, founder of Tashkeel Studio and Gerbou, and Kristina Zanic, whose firm were the interior design consultants. Congrats on the stunning project, which is an ode to the beautiful culture, the beautiful history, contemporary design, and culinary excellence. Sheikha Lateefa, may I start with you?
Sure.
Can you tell us about the journey, about creating a concept like Gerbou? I know it's 2 years in the making, so please tell us about how you got this idea.
At first, actually, when we were starting Gerbou, we were developing Tashkeel. And Kristina as well was with us on planning the interior design. So when we were planning that, we never had a restaurant actually in the building. And we thought, what would be the best thing to do here? We looked at other restaurants outside of the concept of Gerbou to see if we bring those concepts in. And then we thought, why not actually create something homegrown? The same as we created Tashkeel as a homegrown project. We thought we should take something that represents the community that comes to Tashkeel within a food concept.
Right.
So that would be a mix of different cultures working side by side, but rooted in the cultural respect of the country. So it started with that kind of concept in mind. And when we came to Kristina, we came to them with the concept of what the food is and the branding that we did for Gerbou as we developed that, which was the colors of the natural environment around us. So that's really how it started. But we wanted to take heritage recipes and uplift them so that they're not, I don't want to say stuck in the past, but we wanted to breathe a new life into them, to show them in a contemporary form, so that if we are serving here in the restaurant, whether it's nationally or internationally, it can stand at an international platform.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I would love to know, Kristina, how did you guys meet? How did this all happen when you decided to work together and the journey that has taken place from there?
Well, we were already working on the project actually,
Yeah.
and then when the concept came to do a restaurant, it was an amazing vision, I think, at the same time, because what's really wonderful about the Tashkeel program is that they really nurture these young designers, and the designers really focus on various courses and so forth that they do, that they actually also look at local sustainable materials and projects and so forth. And I guess this was a real great opportunity to blend this whole community-centric sort of design into this restaurant as well. So our collaboration came, I guess, a little bit more developed during the process of working on the project itself, but actually then to be part of this restaurant was really a great honor actually, because we got to really work with a lot of the young designers and of course Sheikha Lateefa herself, and really developing various techniques and exploring heritage and so forth. So yeah, that was really kind of how it sort of stemmed. Yeah.
What was some of the first commissions that you worked on?
What was interesting was actually Kristina came onto the mentorship program that we did initially, the 10-week program. So one of the designers, Rima Al-Meheri, who did the fish scale lights, was actually there when Kristina came in for the critique session. So Kristina had seen it initially from the start.
Right.
And then when the sketches came from Kristina's team, I don't know if it was in their subconscious from from that critique or not, but the powder rooms were inspired by the marine, let's say, industry in the UAE and the fisherman history as well. So Rima was the perfect fit for that, and then everything else worked around her. She was just the final thing that connected the UAE and connected the UAE material and the sustainable material, which is basically fish scales that's binded together with a natural binder instead of the usual easy way out that designer uses, which is resin. So she used a natural binder so that even if you put it back into the ground, it'll be compostable back into the earth.
Oh, that's lovely. And there's a sustainability a lot at the heart of what Gerbou does. Can you tell us a little bit about, I mean, not just in the way that you've constructed and brought things together, but also in terms of the food. What was your thought process when you wanted to build something that has to last so many years?
The idea of sustainability, I think, is something we grew up with. Now I don't want to say it's it's the hype at the moment, but if we really look back to the respect of even food in the UAE, it's actually a nose to tail kind of culture, where if you are going to kill an animal for food, you are going to use every single part of it, from its nose to the tail, from its leather, from its organs. And they make food out of their organs, and they make different things out of the leather. So it's a respect for taking the life of this animal that you use the whole thing. The same with planting. For me, I grew up with my grandmother, one of the people who did a lot of business actually in agriculture. So I really grew up with going to her farm, seeing the food actually planted, taking the tomato actually off the plant and taking it straight to the cooking pot, and we start cooking with her. So I wanted to integrate the UAE farms and the organic farms here in the UAE and bring that in, because that's what we know, that's what we grew up with, and we know the effects of pesticides on health.
Yeah.
So we thought, let's go back to our roots, let's go back to human nature and the pace of human nature and things in season. Because, for example, a mango in summer is there. When you eat a mango, it actually has a cooling effect on the body.
Right.
So even foods and seasons will affect your body in that kind of way. The same with the natural products. When you're sitting on wood or leather, it's a different feeling than sitting on something synthetic.
Absolutely.
So we wanted to root it, I don't want to say in the past, but in the natural way of living.
Okay, I understand that.
And that's how Kristina reflected that also in the design.
Yes. Kristina, please tell us about the process of how you went through designing you and your team.
Well, actually, the whole restaurant actually is kind of very soulful. Actually, and you know, firstly, we wanted to preserve the architecture, which is this sort of vernacular architecture that you see, very Emirati orientated. And this double height space, we really needed to preserve the light coming in, the arches that you see. So I think that was really important, that you get that feeling that it's all part of this whole development. But then when you step in, you've got this lovely double height space. We've got this interesting chandelier that has a very natural sort of element to it, where you see imprints of leaves. But then there are these amazing features. So like what Sheikha Lateefa just mentioned about the food, it actually also resonated through the design. And I think we worked with various artists from the program, you know, to work on the screen here behind the reception, which is made out of palm, I think, branches.
Ply palm,
ply palm branches and so forth. So you get this really interesting pattern. And then Sheikha just also told me a great story, which you need to share on about the actual, the tree trunk itself from the ghaf tree.
The ghaf tree actually, it's a tree that's protected in the UAE. It's a tree that you cannot cut down. But last year during the rainy seasons, a lot of ghaf trees fell and they were allowed to be taken away. This ghaf tree actually fell in front of my late father's old majlis. And I thought, this tree has seen generations from Sheikh Zayed to international visitors to the local community. This tree has seen people come in and out of that majlis, people who needed things, people who just wanted diplomatic relationships. So I thought this tree actually was part of the welcoming where my father used to sit. And I thought, actually when it fell, a ghaf you can actually put back up and it will grow. But I had got there and the tree had already been cut after it fell down. So I said, since they've cut it, I have to use this. And I remember in the initial design that Kristina did, it had a sketch of a tree, a chunky tree, but we kept saying, we'll find it. And we kept delaying the design of it. And even when the interior consultant made that table, it didn't fit. So the concept of welcoming from his father, his majlis, I thought was really fitting because this is the building that he built in 1987.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So then I took it on in 2008. So I thought he built this building. It fell in front of his majlis. It used to welcome people. It has to be at the front desk.
Oh,
It was meant to be.
Yeah,
and,
it
and,
was,
I think
absolutely.
actually as a symbol, and the ghaf tree is a symbol of people gathering together. And I think that's really kind of lovely. But actually, as you walk through the restaurant, we have other features we created. We created this interesting installation that sort of represents the fishing nets, and that's the first part of the restaurant where we have dining, and then as you go into the restaurant there's a mocktail bar, and around that mocktail bar there's also elements of ghaf tree represented in bronze on the ceiling elements, and all bespoke. So there's so many little bespoke elements, and sometimes things from a design point of view look so simple when they're finished, but actually the process of actually going through that to get it finished and built and made does take a lot of time and a lot of experimentation. So I think, you know, the journey through the restaurant and also going outside, you know, that also when you represents the way Arabic homes had their outdoor areas. I think it's a really great testament to that. When you come outside to the outdoor area, you're dining al fresco, but there's a beautiful circular area where you're sort of around a campfire
Yes, it's beautiful,
for people to gather. So there's lots of sort of areas within the restaurant that really have a little bit of a story. You sometimes have to look for it, but when you do look for it, you can actually, there is something. So
I would love to uncover a lot of these stories on this podcast. I've noticed that there's a very particular Dubai brick-like imprint around, and it's a very familiar look because I grew up in the city and I remember seeing it in my childhood. But I would love for you to tell the story about why that was picked and how does it feed into the overall story of the restaurant.
In the beginning, we had it in the branding. That's how Kristina's team also picked it up. But I was talking to Jassim Al-Awadi, who's a photographer in the UAE, and he likes to test me. So he keeps showing me patterns. So I told him, this is not UAE. He said, how do you know? I said, the pattern is different. So he actually told me the way he used to follow different patterns. Some you can recognize at Ras Al Khaimah, some you can recognize at Abu Dhabi. This one was particularly Dubai. Even the light, I know now from how much he's been testing me, I know even from the light that it's actually Dubai. And this is a pattern that we see repeatedly. And I thought actually this could be really contemporary in different ways, whether we use it in branding or in you'll see it also in the menu design covers of the leather, which we're using camel leather as well for the menu covers. And you'll see the impressions of that there. But we thought a bit of identity of the past coming into the new represents Gerbou as a whole, because that's what we're doing with the furniture and that's what we're doing with the food. Okay. So that's why we adopted this pattern and we nicknamed it the Dubai pattern.
Oh, I see.
And actually that pattern also, you know, you can see it in the breeze blocks, which you see really in a lot of these Emirati homes as well. And we've also interpreted that pattern, as you can see, really subtle references within this larger fish net installation, and then also at the back of the restaurant. So, but what I really love, and everyone can take something from them, but what I really love is that pattern developed this little kind of a symbol, like a home, like a house.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Gerbou meaning, you know, welcome to my home. To my home.
Yeah.
So when I looked at that and I thought, wow, there's like little houses that we as children would draw.
Yeah.
And I could see that coming through. So I thought that was kind of a lovely tie-in with the whole name of the restaurant as well. So, yeah.
So in terms of like trying to pick the people that you want to work with for the restaurant, what was the curation process like?
It was in two parts. We suggested people, and then, for example, the backdrop, which was Lina Ghalib with the ply palm, Kristina's team had shown the whole structure and the whole formation. And basically, Lina, who does the material, got the material and got that made based on the form. So working with designers for a whole year on the mentorship program, we really identified the people that are hard workers, really look into the sustainability aspect and look into the environment here and how to utilize it. So It's Rima Al-Meheri, Lina Ghalib, and
There was Steve Chambers who also developed.
Chambers, yes.
He also developed the wallpaper for the
For
bathrooms,
yes.
and that's sort of like a series of all these sort of fish you can get in the UAE.
I actually haven't seen it yet, but I really want to see it.
Yeah.
Actually, the bathrooms are kind of almost like a masterpiece in themselves. You feel like you're in this sort of
immersive experience.
Experience, and I think also there's a lot of references to different fish. So the fish was also represented in the tiles. You can see that in the washrooms, and you can also see that outside in the around the mocktail bar outside the pizza oven area. So yeah, there's lots of these like little references. So it's kind of nice, you know, when you bring things down to a much more simpler form, but it looks simple, but actually there's really a thought process to it. So you can see that coming through.
I also want to know, in terms, you've also worked on a couple of pieces, especially in the dinnerware collection and things like that. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've...
We call them the sketch plates. So we wanted the link between Tashkeel and Gerbou. So we thought, how does a designer or an artist start? We always start with a pencil. I know nowadays it's a lot of digital, but I always say the pencil is different. Even in meetings or brainstorming sessions, you grab a paper and you just scribble and say, this is what I want. Even if it's a doodle, other designers will actually understand it. So I thought it's capturing fleeting moments from the past, but still very valuable to today and actually still exist today. So for example, the family scene is actually my husband and my children. You'll see the airplane, which when my children used to, and still do, go to the desert with him, they'll fly the airplane to train the falcon to follow it. So it's still heritage, but I had to put that airplane there to showcase, no, it's actually not something from the past. It's actually from today. And for people to know we're still connected to our roots. Another one I call the poet, where a lot of Arab poetry, for example, people who don't read Arabic don't know the depth of how much, for example, poetry can even describe a woman. But the way they describe a woman is, for example, they talk about a gazelle. And they'll talk about the eyes of the gazelle and the form of the gazelle. So what I did was, I had a oud player playing music with a gazelle next to him, and little flowers growing around him, just showing that poetic element. Another one was a mother and child, which is actually a self-portrait with my son. But those are my little stories that I don't put out there in a sense of making sure the waiters say, this is this person who drew it. If a person recognizes it, they recognize it. If not, it's still a sketch, and it's still a collective memory almost. Yes. So all of those plates are collective memories of people who grew up here. Things like the dolphins. A lot of people don't know that there are a lot of dolphins in the UAE that fishermen from the past see. And I used to live in Jabal Ali for 10 years. I used to live there, so I used to see the dolphins passing by there. And then the culture of the fishermen as well. And then we had the Rabiya bird, which is a protected bird, and the desert rose, the same as we see on the table. I had drawn it because it's a protected bird, and the same way we're trying to protect our culture and preserve it, but make it walk in contemporary culture with us.
I love that.
So it's the link between Tashkeel, the link to the culture, because we wanted the link to Tashkeel also to be there to say, around the corner there's an artist studio that links this place and the roots of this place. And then the food on top also reflects that.
Yeah. So, can you tell me a little bit more about the tables, the beautiful tables that we see throughout the rest?
This table actually is an engraved, laser engraved table, which is based on the ghaf design that we did for the crown canopy, we call, which Kristina's team designed the whole piece, but we worked in collaboration to create the surface. And I remember we had a lot of back and forth with Kristina's team on which method to use. We could have done it in wood, we could have done it in painting, but in the end we ended up in metal.
Bronze,
in bronze, yes.
And it's beautiful, and is that the same one by metal fabric that?
Yes, that's the one by metal
fabric. That was all produced here.
All produced here in Ras Al Khaimah, yes. And then the tables itself, we wanted a bit of heritage. So you see these tables a lot in Morocco. They're foldable usually, but this one is actually fixed, but this is movable. So you can actually lift it as a tray. We wanted a hint of the past, but a little bit of contemporary, and then the Dubai pattern is here as well.
Yeah, and here you can see those little sort of like house
Little
pattern
house
homes, and I think that story is very much interwoven, like you said. It's about personal home, welcome to my home, and so forth. So, yeah, but these patterns of the ghaf tree are really beautiful. So, yeah, it's really come together. And actually, it's really subtle, but when you really look around, you see it everywhere.
It's like a little game that I'm going to play now every time I come here.
Which is nice, actually, for kids, for example. Because I know some museums, they do little find this, they do for children. So if a child is sitting in the restaurant and can't sit still, I have 3 children. So the way I like to see it is even the plates for the kids, I wanted them to discover different things. So even this pattern, we could have a little, just a paper for them, waiting for their food. They can start looking for things or finding them, whether inside or outside as well. So I think it's like a treasure hunt. Even for the adults, they'll start seeing it. So they'll see it here, they'll see it on the pillow, they'll see it on the bag if they take a takeaway, they'll see it on the plates. But it's not kitschy and it's not in your face too much. It's just subtle and it's there.
That's amazing. Kristina, can you tell me about how, in terms of the interior design aspect of it, how did you orient the space and have different areas throughout?
Sure. I mean, of course, coming in, you're greeted by the reception and the ghaf tree, now that we have that lovely story. But then it was also to create really great dining experiences. And firstly, when you come in, you're in this sort of fishnet inspired installation.
It's kind of hugging you.
And it hugs you. So here, there's a lot of flexibility with some of the seating, so you can have smaller and larger group settings. And then as you go into the actual restaurant, there's more sort of intimate seating areas. There's a space out towards the back. But then what's really lovely here, you really get that indoor-outdoor feel because all the windows open up. So you're really able to sort of extend the restaurant to the outdoors and really bring that in. So especially when the weather's really wonderful at this time of the year, so you can be able to do that. And I think there's a real relevance to being able to sort of share that outdoor area with the indoor. And also that outdoor is the community space for Tashkeel, right? So I think a lot of the people and the designers that are within this sort of area, they can all come and gather into this space outside if they're not dining inside, but they can dine outside. So yeah, there's kind of a nice experience as you're going. And it's always a sense of discovery, something different in each of the areas. So we really try to segregate that and sort of make that experience really kind of welcoming as well.
Yeah. I know you're also working on Tashkeel together at the moment. So eventually, I understand there's going to be some sort of a flow between Gerbou. So I know it's still under construction, but can you give us a little teaser about what that's going to look like?
It's actually quite functional compared to Gerbou. So it's we changed the lounge from upstairs to downstairs. So the connection between the gallery and the lounge is there. Right now there's a hoarding around the outdoor dining, but it'll be open. So you have the large olive tree also there with a circular seating around it. So it's completely, the circle keeps coming back. And the way that Kristina's team looked at the circle, we were discussing, and then we came up with the water and fire piece in the center. And we thought, what used to bring people together? What used to bring communities together? In the past, it's actually sitting around the fire and talking. So the community in Tashkeel always, if they start out, sometimes they don't know the people who are there, but that circle will actually bring them together. And you might sit every day for coffee at 9 o'clock, and then there's another person always sitting there at 9 o'clock. You'll end up saying hello to them because you're sitting in that environment that, like we keep repeating, hugging,
that sort of
that brings it together. And then if it's the evening, you get the warmth of the fire and the sound of the water, and it'll spark up conversations. Tashkeel is very much of like-minded people. So that kind of community is curious, but they want to see the way in order to connect. But speaking of the design, I think the design, when we did that with Kristina, let's say it's quite different, but functional. It's really functional and beautiful. So you still get the woods. So there's a lot of wood repeated. In the talk space, there's wood on the back wall. In the meeting room, there's wood. So it's very comfortable, very clean, very airy. it's utilizing the light. Some colors reflect in and out, but it flows in that way.
Right.
And I think what centers it is this big garden area.
Yes.
And I think when the hoarding comes down, the garden really expands. And I think, therefore, this area here is full of trees and lots of birds and lots of nature. So I think it will all start to come together. So, of course, when you have studios, they're all very functional. They have to be,
They have to be,
they
yeah.
have to be functional. But what's really lovely, everything looks onto this kind of courtyard space and garden. So when that's matured, I think it's going to be an area everyone will sort of gather to. So which is really the intent, actually, and it's where the community gathers, right?
Yeah.
This whole design community.
Yeah.
Does this tie into the serendipity that you've spoken about in the past, when you wanted to create Gerbou and Tashkeel, that you have to think so many years forward in creating a sort of a legacy of designers and people and creatives who want to make things happen. So how, what was your thought process of creating spaces that, that are creating a space that's so far in the future that it's hard to imagine what society will look like then?
Yeah. I started Tashkeel in 2008 when I first, I graduated in my college with fine arts degree in 2007. So in 2008, when I opened that, it was a testing ground. I didn't want to lose the critique environment, because once you're solo, and a lot of artists used to make from their homes, you make differently. You start reflecting from your own self. And when I opened Tashkeel in the beginning, we had an artist come over from Italy. He had been working for 20 plus years. At a certain point, I went up and I told him, "What's wrong? I don't see you painting." He's like, "I don't know why I should paint that anymore." And I said, "Why are you saying that?" He said, "I can see what everyone around me is doing, and it makes me question what I'm doing."
Right.
So in a sense, he was almost repeating himself, because he's making from his own consciousness. But once you start interacting, and once you say, what's that material? Or you're using paint on this material, or you're doing it in that form, or you're changing, for example, El Cid, who has the sculpture in front of Tashkeel at the moment, was with us on a residency program for a year. And also I walked into his studio and told him, he'll tell you the story himself, so I'll say it, so he'll say it as well. But I walked into his studio and I said, "El Cid, you're bored." And I like to challenge him, he's like my brother. So he crossed his arms and he said, "Why are you saying that?" I said, "Look at me in the eye, tell me." And I like to challenge him. I just walk around and just have chats with them. So he said, "Why are you saying that?" I told him, "Tell me the truth, are you bored? You're making this too naturally. You're making this, you can close your eyes and be blindfolded and make that." He said, "You're right." So I said, "Listen, you're here for a year, play." I said, "Let me give you a challenge." And I told him, "You're not allowed to paint on this residency."
Oh, wow, okay.
And I had, for my wedding cards, actually, I had small little blocks, little tiny plywood, actually, blocks. And I took them, there were a bunch of, in a box, and I said, "Here you go play with these." And he started cutting them on the laser cutter and playing with them, and just testing out different pieces. Then he started carving foam, and that's how he actually started his work in sculpture, which now he's done all over the world. But it's just because he needed, and he always says, "Thank you for stopping me to paint at that time, because I just needed to find another
way to express his creativity."
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's really great opportunity where designers actually can reinvent themselves, I guess, and
they challenge each other. We just put them side by side, because some people say, "It's you who did it." They say that to me, and I say, "Actually, it's not. I put them side by side and I leave them alone." They actually have those discussions. So even in that circle, you'll find someone being influenced just by sitting there and having that conversation that will trigger. Because I always tell artists, don't make art that looks like other art. Make it look like you, or make it look like the environment or the story you want to tell. And explore something outside of art in order to create it within art. Don't keep looking within the circle of art.
Right.
Once you start looking outside of that, it will influence it in a better way and make you articulate it in a better way.
I'm feeling some parallels sometimes.
Yeah, but it's definitely, it's actually a design philosophy. And I think our design also, resonates through storytelling, and we talk about storytelling in a lot of our projects. And, just getting a designer to really explore heritage and culture and social aspects, even whether it's food. If you sort of take all these real life elements, it becomes authentic. And your design becomes a lot more authentic. So I think being inspired, exactly what you just said, inspired like that, even for design, creating, whether it's a restaurant or a hotel, we have to think that way and not look at what everyone else is doing, and really find that true essence. And I think that was really what was really beautiful about the collaboration here, because working with other designers, but in different elements, you can actually pull it all together, and and it became successful. So
Can you talk a little bit about your research process, the firm's research process when y'all were creating? Because y'all knew y'all were going to be working with the artists regularly. How did you manage to create a space that would be cohesive?
Well, actually, we were kind of lucky. So we have the heritage experts with us, so who can actually say, "Oh no, that's not local." I think we just heard the explanation of the breeze block design, but I think there's a lot of research involved in terms of just understanding the architecture, researching that, visiting museums, going to various artist studios. So some of the team actually did a lot of that, from being recommended by Sheikha Lateefa as well as the team. So, I think doing that research really helps understand a little bit about the heritage and the culture. And also, I think there was also this development of the ghaf tree, the patterns you could get from that, and the Dubai patterns, as we now call it. So there is a lot of research, and it's really interwoven into the project. And also from a material point of view, the sustainability side, where we talked about the waste of fish scales, someone to think of that, and I sort of experienced here as well, the date pit, someone was making something from that. So there's always something that, that you think is a waste product, but actually can be utilized in a way. So we got to experience that. But research is important, but we were always sort of a collaboration and saying, how can we develop that further? And I think, having people who are local and experts at it, and also I guess it's a way to sort of better your knowledge about what's local as well. So it's been kind of an interesting process. We should document all of that. Actually.
Yes, please do.
Document all these really fantastic
this
patterns.
is a slide documentation.
Slide documentation. But physically, in a book, and the sketches,
We're hoping for a book, hopefully. At the 1-year anniversary of Gerbou, we want to launch a book that basically gives some recipes, gives some design stories, and really goes into it. We'll start also with a little catalog with the opening of Gerbou that explains a little bit, but I think after a year, seeing people's reactions, understanding the menu, and seeing if we need to change anything, and seeing people's feedback, because it's a lot of communities about feedback. And in the UAE, we're a collective society, so it's all about the community instead of just the individual alone. So hopefully those stories will be documented and will be heard.
And hopefully they'll share some of the recipes.
Yes, because I heard the food is wonderful.
I'm going to have to see if they're going to be secret recipes.
Maybe some.
Maybe some.
Love that. We're coming towards the end of the podcast. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Just from our point of view, and as designers, working with designers, and it's very rare that we get this opportunity to work from the front end actually with designers. So for us, that has been an amazing opportunity. A lot of our projects, we don't get to collaborate with other artists. It's always after in the post-contract stage, but this was really a true collaboration, and that whole ethos of bringing designers together, sharing the ideas, and also taking guidance to understand the UAE heritage. So for us, I think, this was a one-off, really fantastic opportunity and project to do.
Happening as
Yeah,
well.
no. I think it's all part of everything, everything here. But, these sort of projects don't come up often, right? So, and it's really the authenticity of it. And it's so design orientated, being designers, and it's also a design hub here. So, for us, that's kind of that collaboration was really fantastic to experience.
What about you?
I think for me, Gerbou and working with Kristina, it's almost a proof of concept that you can actually look at bespoke pieces in this kind of way. What I compare with other designers, design consultancies that I've looked at, is I completely understand why they do what they do, which is truly, you look at every single technical aspect, from where the plugs are, where the wires are, where the speakers are, and then you suddenly have to start looking in your database of what the size of the chair is and how the form is. So I understand how much it is where it's easier in a way to just say, okay, these are the different interior design companies that we work with. These are their sofas, these are their forms. And it's easier for different design consultancies to do that. I think it's brave to step away and say, okay, what's the bespoke? And I think it's a proof of concept for long lead projects, whether it's a hotel lobby, whether it's the major hotel suites, to say, actually, let's tell a story. Let's make people feel welcome, feel at home, which reflects the Arab hospitality. So I think Gerbou in itself is a proof of concept of it can be made in the UAE, can be designed in the UAE, and can be placed in projects that are of significance and not feel like it's a junior level designer making it, which they're not. Yes, some of them are recent graduates. Yes, some of them have been working for 3 to 5 years, but still, through the Termin program, we really challenge them to say, no, make it better. Make it better. Your finishing isn't good enough. And sometimes, even with some designers, you don't get that finishing because they want the product in and out very fast.
Right.
So I think with bespoke design, yes, it takes longer, it takes more patience, but I think it will live through the whole project.
Yes. Okay.
But I think also your personal involvement,
Yes.
actually, we don't experience that often with clients. You know, you have a real personal touch, a design ethos yourself. So I think that really came through, and and your guidance on it, and introducing all these various artists and designers that we had the chance to work on, and critiquing, which is the whole point, right? So of the actual Tashkeel ethos, right?
Yeah, but what was really nice with Kristina's team is actually we used to sit for long brainstorming chats, and I used to go to their office. They used to come here in Tashkeel. We just used to talk it out, and I think they always say the first initial ideas, you have to get them out in order to dig deeper. And I think that's what we did. We kept going back and forth and sit, and I had no problem in sitting. Sometimes we used to sit for hours, hours and hours and hours, really. But I think it was worth it in the end. Yeah. And I hope we're 1 week off the official opening, so I'm just waiting to hide somewhere in a corner, and I'm glad people don't know what I look like. And I just want to see the reactions of people and how they experience the space and the design and the food.
I can't personally wait to visit it myself. Thank you so much, the both of you. I really appreciate your time and your insights on this beautiful space. Thank you also for joining us on this episode of In Design With. You can subscribe to our podcast on YouTube or Spotify on Identity AE. This is your host Anisha signing.